All right, wonderful. We're just going to give everyone a minute or so to enter the webinar. Welcome everybody. In the meantime, if you can let me know that you can hear me loud and clear, that would be fantastic. We've got the little chat section down there, so let me know where you're calling in from and that you can hear everything loud and clear. That would be wonderful. Sounds great, says Blake. Excellent. Where are you calling in from, Blake? Loud and clear from South Africa, from Kosani. Excellent, all clear. Daniel, UK. All right, they're streaming in. We'll give it another 20 seconds, gentlemen? How you guys doing this morning, Ollie, Derek?
Yeah, good. Cool. Good.
Yeah, ticking along. It's awfully late here, so it's not as late as it is over in New Zealand and Australia. I'm coming from Scotland.
We're all in lockdown. We've got Australia, Brisbane, Australia is Ollie, Scotland, Derek, and I'm in New Zealand at the Raygun HQ or at my home. I hope everyone's safe out there as well. So, all right, we're 1 minute in. I think that's plenty of time for everyone to turn up. We've got plenty of comments. A lot of people on the line today. It's been a very popular webinar for good reason. Gentlemen, I'm really excited for this. So let's get started. The art of shipping and monitoring software with speed and confidence, brought to you by Octopus and Raygun. This topic is great. You know, all the customers that I talk to are under increasing pressure to ship code faster than ever before. And the ones that are doing a great job of this have excellent monitoring in place because they have the confidence to know that they can ship really frequently and capture any errors or performance lags that might occur before their customers experience them. So I think it's a really relevant topic. We've got a customer that ships once a year. That's very dangerous. We've got customers that ship every 6 seconds. And, you know, when you talk about the differences there, it's you know, very, very impressive what are the kind of leading customers are doing out there. So let's jump to the next slide. We'll jump into a little bit of housekeeping first, and then I'll hand it over to Ollie and Derek to run the demo and all the content. So, yep, there we go. All right, so we will send out a full recording of this webinar. So don't worry about that. That will come out into your inbox in about 24 hours. We'll also attach a copy of these slides, so don't worry about taking too many notes, but we would love your questions. So this is going to be a bit interactive. We'll have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. We'll see if there's any questions that we can ask during the demo as well, but we'll let these guys flow through their deployment process. There's also a community, the Octopus Slack community, so you'll see a link there. You're very welcome to jump in there and join the community and ask questions there. There's also a Q&A section in Zoom. You'll see at the bottom there, so please put all your questions there and we'll make sure we give a solid 10 or so minutes at the end and ask the questions. So please fire away any questions and we're happy to answer those. We love the discussion. First of all, let me launch a really quick poll. So the reason we do this is, you know, we're talking to the computer screen. We've actually got hundreds of people out there. We'd love to learn a little bit more about you, the team size, how frequently you're shipping, just so we can kind of understand where you folks are at. So I'm going to launch that poll right now. Hopefully everyone can see that. First question, how big is your development team? It's always interesting to hear kind of what scale you're at. How often does your team deploy to production? You'll see a few different options there, multiple times per day, multiple times per week, multiple times per month, less than once a month. And then also, do you use Octopus Deploy and or Raygun? Very interested to know if you're using the power of those two tools combined or one or the other. That would be interesting to know as well. So I'll just give it another 3 or 4 seconds. We've got about 50% voted, so it's ticking up pretty quickly. So I'll just give it a few more minutes and then I'll share it with you guys and then I'll hand it over to you. All right, 60% voted. That's pretty healthy. So let's, in that poll, share the results. So we've got a lot of 6 to 20. Do you guys see that, Ollie, Derek?
Yeah, definitely do.
Yep.
So we've got a lot of 6. Yeah, it is interesting. Actually, 75% of people have got teams greater than 6. Almost 20% of people with 50 plus, which is pretty cool. Multiple times per month seems to be the highest frequency of deployment into production, 50%. And we've also got 13% doing multiple times per day, which is pretty impressive. Nice work. 10% using both, so we've got a bit of potential there to maybe show you some new ways of deploying and monitoring. So hopefully you can learn some stuff around that. And then 55% using Octopus, 13% using Raygun, and 20% using neither. So it's pretty interesting. So we've got a lot of your crew out there, Derek, which is great.
Excellent.
Excellent. All right, I'll stop sharing that. Let's jump to the next slide and I'll hand it over to you, gentlemen. So there, please introduce yourself. I'll hide my video, but I'll monitor the questions. So please, if you have any questions, folks out there, drop them in the Q&A and we'll get to them at the end. Enjoy the show.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much, Andre, for the kind introduction. Hello, I'm Derek Campbell. I'm a continuous delivery architect at Octopus Deploy, and I work in the customer success team. Ollie?
G'day, my name's Ollie Bannister. I'm a software engineer here at Raygun, and I specialize in front-end technologies like React, Redux, and I love all things CSS.
Yeah. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, and we're going to be using some of those CSS skills today. Okay, so let's start with the agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about Octopus Deploy, and then we're going to jump in, chat a little bit about Raygun, and then we're going to get to the interesting stuff. Let's be honest, everyone's here for the demos, and then we'll have some Q&A, and then we'll wrap up. So let's jump on in. So what is Octopus Deploy? Octopus Deploy is a deployment automation tool. It does one thing, and it does it really well. It does deployments, and does deployments of applications, infrastructure, databases, and lots of other things. You can use it to promote releases between environments, so that's push your packages from dev to test to pre-prod, and so forth. One of the key things, the benefits of Octopus, it's very reliable and consistent. The main reason for that is once you configure the deployment process, it's the same for dev, test, all of your environments all the way through to production. One of my favorite features is it's API first. So ultimately, anything you can do within the user interface, you can definitely do over the API. It's also we launched our cloud product back in 2018, and that's now just come up for 2 years old now. We did initially start as a on-premise product. And a fun fact about Octopus is that roughly about 10% of all deployments that happen to Azure globally come from an Octopus instance. And one thing we did do is we've launched a new free starter edition. So that's both on-premise and in cloud, and it's free for small teams. So ultimately, if you have up to 10 deployment targets, you can use Octopus free forever.
Excellent, that sounds great, Derek. Now I'll tell you a bit about Raygun. So Raygun's a software monitoring suite. It gives you visibility into how users are really experiencing your software. It enables you to detect, diagnose, and resolve issues with greater speed and accuracy. We have 3 main products: crash reporting, real user monitoring, and application performance monitoring. What crash reporting enables you to do is discover, diagnose, and resolve every error and crash affecting your users. Real user monitoring allows you to monitor real user sessions and improve your front-end performance. And application performance monitoring allows you to uncover server-side performance bottlenecks right down to the code level. We have a wide range of integrations. We also have automated deployment tracking. And if you're interested in getting started, there's a 14-day free trial and plans starting from as little as $19 per month. Here at Raygun, we're actually a really big advocate for dog fooding our own product. So what this means is that we're using Raygun to actually help improve the Raygun service for our end users. We actually use Octopus as well. Do you use Octopus, Derek?
I do use Octopus, funnily enough, Ollie. I also use Raygun. We've used Raygun in the past, and it's funny. It's a funny story, actually. I mentioned it earlier on that we've got our cloud product. We actually use Octopus to deploy Octopus, along with some other technologies such as Terraform. I think that's really cool. And it's one of those things, really dog fooding, which is really great. It's quite cool, and I really love the Raygun product as well. I think it really ties in nicely with our next slide, actually, which is about the application lifecycle management. And I think what this does is this really pulls together. This really pulls this together quite nicely. I think what you've got here is obviously, you start off with your plan, you code, you push it through, you build it, you test it. And this is when Octopus comes in, really starts to come into its own. You create a release, you run through your deployment, and then you're then in your operation phase. And as part of that, you certainly obviously want to monitor. And I think Octopus and Raygun go together really well. And this is where I see the key benefit. Where do you think Raygun fits in here? Do you think this is an accurate representation, Ollie?
Yeah, I really do. I think Raygun really finds its stride in the operation, monitoring, and planning stages of this process. In the operations space, we can sort of wire up data associated with normal software operations through a variety of our integrations. This enables us to correlate things such as issue tracking tickets, commits, deployments, and other metadata that might be useful to compare against software issues. Then once you've done that, we can head over to the monitoring stage, and Raygun essentially sits over the top of your application, keeping an eye on performance bottlenecks. So when things go wrong, it's able to notify you the issues and then help spread this information to the team. And then using this information in the planning stage, teams can then use this and we can get insights to help drive what things software teams and project managers should focus on next.
Awesome, awesome. I really love the Raygun product, along with Octopus, obviously. Slightly biased as an employee, but ultimately, I think these two tools go really well together, because what you get is, you know, I come from an ops background and then moved into DevOps, and one of the things that used to frustrate me was that you'd log up, you'd see you'd use the APM at the time, and you'd see all these errors, and you're like, what's all these errors? And quite often what happens is a lot of them are, you know, they're fine. And I think like that, being able to use something like Raygun really kind of nails it. You can pinpoint where the issue is, resolve it, and then kind of move on to and fixing the rest of the errors. So yeah, it's
Totally.
They really go well together, I think.
Hand in hand, really.
Yeah. I think so. So I think it's time that we probably jumped into the demo then. Let's.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah, excellent. Let's do it. Okay, so let's start with Octopus very briefly. What we've got here is, this is Octopus. We'll jump into the dashboard very quickly. What you've got down on the left-hand side is your projects, and then across the top here, you've got the environments. And projects tend to be collated together with things that shipped at the same time. So if you're running, say, for instance, a monolithic application, and there's nothing wrong with that either, there's nothing wrong with that, they would tend to ship at the same time. If you're running microservices, you may find that you have like 300 projects. That's just something to be aware of. So let's jump in. We've got the Raygun demo. And then, so this is a dashboard. This is where you keep items, you know, you can track which version of what software is where. And then this is where you've got the deployment process. So the deployment process, this is, as I mentioned earlier on, this is where you configure your deployment process once, and then you can kind of set it and forget it. And then this is where the consistency of Octopus really comes into play. So what we've got here is one of my favorite steps within Octopus. It's a manual intervention step. You may think I'm a little bit crazy, but ultimately what it is here is the manual intervention step is great at just getting that additional approval. It's effectively like a gate between, you know, so that you can approve your deployment. Additionally, you can use it for things like you may find that you get to a database deployment. You could then put that in to just get your DBAs to check it. But in this one, we've just configured this so that Octopus managers, I'm going to be approving my own deployment today. And this step here only runs within production. The benefit here is generally if you have dev, test, pre-prod, etc., more often than not, most people don't really, well, it's not great to have a broken test environment or dev, but no one really cares if it's down for a short period of time. And this is the you know, once it gets to production, hopefully everything has been great in test and you push it through. Then the next one is, well, I may be repeating myself a little bit, is another one of my favorite steps, but I will allude to that, the reason why later on when you see the logs. What you've got here is you're using the deploy an Azure web app step. And what this does is it deploys a packaged application to an Azure web app. Very straightforward. So what we're doing here is using a worker pool to do the deployment. We're just using the bundled Azure tools, and then everything else is just set to the default. You can configure features in here as well, like if you want some custom deployment, post and deployment scripts as well, configuration variables. And we are actually going to be substituting variables today as well, and Ollie will show that in just a moment.
Yeah, thanks.
So that's your deploy up Azure web app step. And Ollie, do you want to talk through the register deployment?
Yeah, sure. So our final step in the process today is our register deployment inside Raygun step. Essentially what this uses is our deployments API, which will essentially timestamp a deployment inside the Raygun application. All this is a PowerShell script Open this up, which makes use of a range of Octopus parameters. Here we can see we're grabbing the Octopus release number, grabbing user information, we're also grabbing release notes. This is all then sent through to Raygun, and we can use this to help identify problems with our deployments. One thing to note here is we've also got some project variables set. So we've got our Raygun API key. We've also got our Raygun authentication token, and this is required to be able to post to this endpoint. Where you can set these inside Octopus is down on the left-hand side. You have the project variables section, and here you'll see I've defined Raygun API key, Raygun authentication token, and entered it in the values. Now, Derek, these are encrypted at rest, aren't they?
Yeah, they actually, this is one of the things that you do have to do is if you have a look here, you have to set it as a sensitive variable. So that's something to be aware of. You could put this in, and one of the things is that you can never get that data back out. It's not something that you can browse. The only time it's decrypted is during the deployment process. So you can actually, to do that, you would change the type here into a sensitive variable type. So that's just something to be aware of. And variables are really useful. What you can do here is think about it as like a SQL connection string. You know, you've normally got, I hope, it's not always the case. I hope that dev, test, pre-prod, and production have different databases, different SQL servers, username, passwords, etc. And you can use the variables to set things as well, like naming conventions as well. But yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, so yeah, no problem. So we've got the deployment process. At this point, let's take a step back and jump into Jenkins. So Jenkins is the world's largest, most used build server. It's actually, probably the reason for that is it's open source. It's a really powerful build tool. You can also use it for deployments as well, and pretty much everything. It's super extendable as it's open source. So, you know, ultimately, if you think there's a plugin for it, there likely is. So what you've got here is we've got 3 steps in our build process. It's what we're going to do is we're going to build the tool, we're going to build the package, we're going to deploy it to test, and then lastly to production. But let's jump into the CI step. And one of the things just to be aware of is we have a Jenkins plugin. So if you want to do this within Jenkins, go to octopus.com/downloads, download the Jenkins plugin, and then install it on Jenkins. At that point, there are some configuration options. Check out octopus.com/docs and type in Jenkins, and you'll get a step-by-step instruction on how to configure that. Okay, so let's jump into Jenkins. What we've got here is we're pointing it to a repository which is open to the world. We will share this as well. We'll send this over in the email. Okay, so what we've got here, we've got all these repository, which we're then specifying the master branch. What we've got here is it's going to poll the repository every 60 seconds. So later on when we do some deployments, there may be a slight gap. That's just, will take potentially up to 60 seconds to deploy. Okay, so this button here, always make sure you delete your workspace after, before the build starts. I've saw so many issues if you don't clean that out, you know, false negatives, false positives, etc. And then what we're doing is we're running through, we're changing the directory. We're then doing npm install, and then we're generating the packages. Let's push it into the dist folder using grunt dev. Okay, so what we're doing, we've got the Octopus CLI, and these are all steps. Without installing the extension, you won't be able to use any of these steps. So that's just something to be aware of. We're specifying the package ID, which is Raygun. We've got the version number, which will be changed there. We're generating a NuGet package. You can also do zip as well. As you can see here, we're specifying the dist folder, and then we're grabbing everything within that folder. And then lastly, we're packaging, we're outputting the NuGet package. Okay, so then at this point, we've built the package. We then push it to Octopus. As you can see here, we've got the file. And then lastly, we're going to, so at this point, you've uploaded the package. You're going to then create a release within the Octopus Raygun server, and then specifying the project of Raygun demo. And as you can see, if you go down, we then use the build other project step. again, this is like a fantastic one. What you can do here is you can chain your build and your deployments from Jenkins, and this is the thing. So what I've got here is obviously just trigger that regardless. So yeah, okay, let's save this step. And then the next two steps are almost identical. They're effectively, the only difference is we'll point one to test and one to production. And you can do this for dev as well. The reason for test and production is just to keep the environment low. So what we've got, there's no source code management, there's no triggers. All this is doing is once the first step finishes, it will kick off the second step. And this is just a post-build action. You could do this in a single step if you wish. Generally not recommended, but you certainly could do this. So what we've got here is we've got the deploy a release step. And what we're specifying the server, the space that we're using, the project, again, the release number. And then this is where basically the only difference is. As you can see here, this is just a drop down. As it's authenticating using an API key using a service account. One thing, if you're going to click one button within Jenkins, particularly for Octopus, is use this button. Click this, please click this button. The main reason is when you kick off a deployment, it will pull back all the log files from Octopus, and it will surface it within Jenkins. This is really useful for if you have separation of roles where you may find that someone doesn't have access to Octopus, but they have access to Jenkins to do the check-in. This way, then they can see what's happening in Octopus. So please check this. There are certain occasions where I would say don't check it, and I have the perfect combination where I won't select it for production. The main reason is with our manual intervention step. Generally, it can be days, well, hours, days, weeks, potentially months, hopefully not years, for approval. So what happens here is, in this instance, you only have a 10-minute window to approve the deployment, or it will look like it failed within Jenkins. So in this instance, for production or any steps that have manual intervention, generally I would recommend not selecting that. Okay, so let's go back. I just want to make sure that there's definitely no smoke and mirrors. So let's have a look. We've got step in here. And then we've got the exact same configuration. The only difference is that we've specified production and we have unticked to show deployment. So that's the build server. So just one thing to be aware of actually. When I mentioned earlier on, you create a user for Jenkins. It's what I've got here is this. If we just if you come in and then go to users, you'll see that we have a Jenkins account. And if you have a little cog here, that's the service account. And to generate that API key, you can just come in and then select the API key. And as you can see, we've got this here. You just select new API key, put in the purpose. I'm not going to generate a API key because someone who, if they have a photographic memory, could get access to the server very, very quickly, and our demo could go a little bit wrong. So anyway, so yeah, so that's the Jenkins side of things. So let's jump in, and there we go. We've got the view. We've got all this here.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Derek. So now that we've got a bit of an understanding around how our deployment pipeline is going to work, I feel now is probably a great time to head over to our demo website and sort of exhibit some healthy behavior. So here we've got a sign-up form. You can sort of think of this as a production environment. And as you can see, I'll go ahead and create an account. And take note, in the console, we see that there's been no errors. We can go ahead, create our account. We've successfully created our account, exhibited no problems. Now we can go ahead and hit into the sign-up flow. So that's sort of to show that, this is in a sort of healthy state. We're not experiencing any major problems here. So now we sort of want to go ahead and jump into the code and throw a bit of a spanner into the works. One of the first things I'd like to show you is how you can integrate Raygun into your application. All that's required is in your base index or template. You include a snippet. This will install our Raygun for JavaScript provider, but it is worth mentioning that we have providers in 17 other languages. Once you've installed the provider, you then just need to do some configuration. Towards the bottom of our body, we've here specified our API key. This is so we can wire up errors and user sessions with your specific application inside of Raygun. We've enabled products like crash reporting and real user monitoring, also known as Pulse. And we've also set the version number. Here we've actually made use of Octopus variables once again. And these can be added directly into files that you're working with. And these can be updated upon deployment. And then for demo purposes today, I've also statically set a user, but this is something that you'd probably want to dynamically set once users authenticated onto your service. So that's all that's required to get Raygun added into your application. So now I'm going to go ahead, head over to this errors.js file, which essentially is going to emulate a range of errors and cause some problems onto our production side. So turning onto this flag should turn on these problems. Head down to my terminal and run grunt. Great, done without errors. Now I'm going to go commit these up to our GitHub repository. Bad things. And then push this up. Now Jenkins is going to pick up these changes and trigger off our Jenkins job. So while we wait for that to be picked up inside of Jenkins, it'd be a great time to head over to our Raygun application. So here we've got a deployment webinar application set up inside of Raygun. It's worth noting on a plan, you can have as many applications as you wish. In the previous step inside of Octopus, you saw that we set up our Raygun API key and a Raygun authentication token. Where these can be found is if you head over to your application settings inside the specific application, you can find the API key here and also regenerate it. I mean, this is great. If somehow someone's taken this or it's causing problems for you, go ahead, reset that and update that in your project. As for the authentication token, you can head over to your user settings under My Settings. And if you scroll down, you'll see your external or access token. Now I'll be regenerating this after this webinar, so there's no need to take note of that. So we'll head back over into our crash reporting application. And as we can see, if we change the time zone to a day, we made a deployment. The latest deployment is 2020.3.43. And this is to sort of show you that, this is the last healthy deployment that we had. And we can't actually see any upticks in errors since this has gone live. We have no active errors. We have no active errors in our error tab. So this is sort of showing us that, we're in a healthy state, got no problems here. So if we head over to Jenkins, hit refresh, we should see that our changes have been picked up and it started up our deployment process.
I think it's already deployed.
It's already been, so fast. So that's great news. As we head over to our Raygun demo app, we can see that's great. We've deployed out to our test environment for build 2020.3.44. And we've also got the manual intervention step on the production. Now, with the nature of software development, problems can often be overlooked. Even with the best processes in place, we can still introduce new errors into production. And this makes it super important to have monitoring in place to help identify problems before your customers do. For teams moving fast and deploying often, this is key for having peace of mind. So for demo purposes today, I'm going to pretend that we had a look at our test environment, we overlooked some problems, possibly you've made some changes that affected other areas of your code base that your tests didn't actually take into account. So I'm going to go ahead over to here and go ahead and manually approve my deployment. Now don't be like Ollie, you should probably get someone else to deploy this out, but bad things, and I'm going to proceed with this deployment. What this is going to do is Let's allow this deployment to be deployed out to our production environment. So we've hit step 1. Now it's going to go ahead, acquire our packages, deploy at our website, and registers this deployment inside of Raygun. We can head over to the task log if we want to see more information around what's actually happening. We can see information around when it started, when it's finished, and how long things have taken to complete.
This is, could you just demo why this step 2 is one of my favorites? If you expand out the deploy website, and then next one down.
Oh, next one down, perfect.
That it's just because I'm lazy. Like just because you get the URL back and you can click it and open it, which is really great.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty valuable feature. And if you have a lot of environments, you don't want to be keeping track of all of these links. So here's our problematic website on our production box now. And as you saw, we introduced a range of errors previously. So I'll go back through the sign-up flow. Hold on. No, that's fine. Interesting. One moment, please. There we go. Now we're triggering our errors. Just need this cached. So I'll go ahead and go through the sign-up flow. And create our account. And as you can see in our console, we actually saw a range of problems on the client side. But from the front end, it sort of seems as if everything went smoothly. So this means that problems can often be overlooked. And it's really hard to gain visibility into some of the problems your users might be coming across. This may mean you're losing customer signups, which then turns into revenue loss. And this could also mean you're not accepting customer payments on a credit card payment form. So now we've sort of got this broken site set up. We can head back over to our Raygun application. I'll just refresh this one. Great. So here we can see errors have spiked up since a specific deployment has been released. We can see there's 4 new errors and there's been 1 deployment. Down in our active tab, we can see that there's 3 different error groups, and they all appeared about a minute ago. I can click over to our deployments and we can actually see that the specific deployment that could have caused these problems to arise is 2020.3.44. So what I can do is head over to the specific deployment. This will show us information around this deployment. We can see things such as new errors since the deployment's been released. We can see any regressions, which is resolved errors that have reoccurred since this has gone live. We can also see still occurring errors that have yet to be resolved. There's also notes tabs, so we can see that it was Jenkins that deployed this one out. We can also see any commits, providing you set up version control commits. So what I'm going to do is I'll jump into one of these errors. We can go and see a few more information around this problem. Now I do have one of my favorite integrations set up here today. This is the GitHub integration. This takes a little bit of time to process. And so we might be able to revisit this later and we'll be able to see the exact line of code in which the error occurred on. But from here, we can see an error summary. It basically summarizes all of the information that we cover in the next few tabs. Here we can see error details. You can see it was on version 2020.3.44. We can see the message that was returned. We can see metadata around the request that was executed. We can see environment information. So maybe this is an error that only occurs on a Windows 10 machine running Chrome 80. We can also add custom tags and custom data. Now this feature is really valuable if you say running A/B tests on your website and the problem only exhibits in the B version. So adding this custom data can really help you identify whereabouts the problems are happening and help you fix them easily. We can head over to our session information. And here we can see Ollie Bannister from New Zealand. on the specific IP, running a desktop machine, head into these problems. We can see the flow that he took to find the issues. So I head over to the sign up page, filled out my sign up form, and here we see that there's 3 new errors that arise. So this is sort of showing us that, this is how the user flow went. This is what they saw. But if you really want to drill into this, we can head over to our breadcrumbs feature. Additional data can be extracted from the raw data tab. This is great if you have a complex problem and you want to do further analysis on it. Additionally, all of this data can be shown through our reuse monitoring product as well. And in reuse monitoring, we're focusing on the performance of our application. Here we can see a breakdown of all of the performance that happens, and we can correlate this with specific deployments. We can see information around specific sessions, and a really powerful tool we have here is the ability to be able to filter this information by a specific version, among many other options. So we can say the specific version for build 2020.3.44. Now we can say, great, there's really only 2 users, be 2 Ollie Bannisters, and this is because I hard-coded in that user information in the Raygun configuration. If I head over, we've got more information around the users accessing our website. We can see information around the browsers that they're running. We can see the platforms that they're running them off. So here we've got some users on Windows. We've also got some users on a Mac. We can see geography data around the users that have experienced this specific deployment. So we've got some users from New Zealand. We've also got some users from Australia. We can also see that people in Australia are having a slightly slower time than people from New Zealand. If I head over to the live tab, we can also see live users on our website right here, right now. And this is great if you're just trying to see how many users are actively using a website, whereabouts they're geologically located. A really powerful tool of the run feature is the ability to be able to compare metrics. If I head over to the dimension, we can change this to be version. So we could say, in our previous deployment, 2020.3.43 is our previous, we have top level filters, you have to turn that off before this will show you all of them. 2020.3.43. So we'll select our previous deployment. Now we'll go ahead and select our current deployment. Ooh. Great. From here, we can see that the previous version is running 23.9% faster than the latest version. This also highlights that some of the changes that we may have made actually impacted performance, as well as introduced some errors. So this is an easy way to get an idea around, maybe we should be going back, reverting some things, and making some tweaks. Here we can see information around median load time, average load time, P90s and P99s. We can see the distribution of average load times. We can compare the pages and the load times for each specific page. We can also see user satisfaction for both of these deployments. So now that we've sort of identified that we've got some issues with this specific deployment, now is probably a great time to head back over into our code and resolve some of the problems that we have. So turning off our issues. Go ahead and run grunt. And I'll commit these changes up to Git. I'll push these up to GitHub. And Jenkins will pick this up once again and go ahead with our deployment process. And while we wait for this to happen, Derek, I'd love to ask you, what are your general recommendations around rollbacks and roll forwards?
That is one of the best questions I've had in a webinar. That it's such a difficult thing to do. Well, see, in that application that we have just now, we could come into Octopus. I'll jump in here. Yeah. We could come into Octopus and then just effectively redeploy the previous version. that, you know, what you do is you could come in and go to 2020 3.4 and then redeploy to production. At that point, everything's great. You've rolled it back. When you add in the database layer or any sort of data layer, really, unless you catch it within the first minute or two, generally always roll forward. There are ways to mitigate any sort of rollbacks. Like, you know, you can use, say, blue-green deployments. That would be something where you deploy it to blue or green and then switch those round. But really, the best way to do it is to always roll forward. What's your experience in that side of things?
Great, thanks for that. So we head over to Jenkins. I believe this one's jumped through the hoops on us again. Oh no, here we can see it's triggered. The Raygun CI job is already completed. And now the downstream projects have triggered the Raygun deploy to test. And once that's finished, we'll see that hit the production.
Whilst that's happening, one thing just to be aware with Octopus, with the plugin, we were hoping to do Jenkins first. That tends to be the best process now. You can't natively do that just yet with Octopus, but that is something that should be coming out in the next few months. So if you do have, instead of obviously configuring your job, you have that Jenkins file, that is something that will be supported by Octopus in the near future.
Oh, great. Awesome. So as we can see, the fixed changes have now been deployed out to our test environment. We've also got the manual intervention step sitting on production. This time, I'm going to head into our test environment, head over to the task log. This is a great example where this link comes handy. You can head over, open our test website, double check that the solution we came up with resolved our problem. I'll go ahead, create another account. Perfect. We successfully created our account and we didn't exhibit any of the problems reported from Raygun. We can head back to our sign-in page and all's looking well. So this gives us the confidence to move forward and approve this deployment out to production. So we'll head back in here, sign it to myself. Add a bit of a release note and proceed.
That manual intervention step, it goes perfectly with your use case.
I think it's really powerful, and I think, you know, it's probably the perfect sort of barrier to ensure that changes going out into production have been appropriately tested. And I mean, in the examples we're doing today, we're sort of approving our own deployments, but in the real world, you'll probably see software teams use this as a sort of PR or, you know, verifying that, you know, someone else has gone and tested out your changes and made sure that things are working as intended.
It's great. It really is. And it's funny because you can use variables. So you could actually insert, say, telephone numbers, email addresses, contact details for people to go and get approval as well. We see that quite a lot. You know, you may find it's just it might be an external approval. It could be a client approval. It could give you, you know, speak to Dave at company X, which is quite cool. Exactly. And I guess it adds a bit of accountability to, you know, specific deployments. You know, who allowed this one to go out live, and yeah, you know, that's really powerful. So now that we feel we've resolved our issues, we can head back over to Raygun. I'll open up our crash reporting tool. You have to bear with me, I'm on Australian internet. Great. And I drill into our specific time range. We have 2 deployments here. One. Give this a refresh. I really like how you can correlate those releases straight in on your dashboard. and it's really great. And you can also use it so that it would with the GitHub integration that you've got with Raygun, you can actually identify it will go down to the single line of code that caused those errors, isn't it?
Exactly, that's exactly right. Now I imagine this is probably caused from one of you still having our production website up, but we're pretty confident that our last deployment 2020.3.45, was what actually resolved our issues. But we want to know in the future, if these come back, how are we going to gain visibility into this? If I select all of our error groups, head over to the resolve and version, and then set this to be the deployment in which we figure we've resolved our problems. Chosen this one, and it's going to discard any future occurrences below this resolved version. What this will actually be able to do is resolve issues we're seeing, like we see over here after the deployment's gone live, where errors are still occurring in older versions of our application. And once users refresh their browsers, they'll actually have resolved those problems. Great. Now our issues are sitting in our resolved issue section. This is great if you still want to drill back in, see what caused those issues, and do some further analysis. So that sort of shows the power of what Raygun monitoring can do, and hand with Octopus deployments, being able to pump all of that information through, and Jenkins being able to run that out. One thing I'd love to show is the power that this has in a production environment. Here I've got a great example of what crash reporting can look like when you have a large volume of data. Here over time, we can see there's been a range of deployments for this test application. We can see actual upticks over time and trends that we're seeing caused from updates we're doing. And obviously you can also still drill back into the specific deployment and view what's happened and has the issues been resolved since then. Another powerful tool that we didn't discuss today, but maybe we can discuss in a future webinar, is our application performance monitoring tool. This sort of shows you, we've seen the real user monitoring story, which is sort of your front-end user performance, but APM really gives you that understanding of what's happening on the back end, and how we can also correlate this with specific deployments and see how they've impacted that. So we can see changes to our app decks, average request breakdown, and execution speed of requests. And we can see the specific deployments that this could correlate to. Now this is a feature that's still in beta, but we should be releasing this the next few weeks to a month. Great, so now I'll take this back over to our slides, and I'll hand it back over to you, Derek.
Yes.
Excellent.
Do you want me to jump into the questions now, Derek?
Yeah, that would be fantastic, Andre.
No worries. So we've got a bunch of questions, fellas. So let me just dive in. You guys can hear me fine, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
How do I run a single step in the deployment process? So this one will be for you, Derek, I assume.
So
how do I run a single step in the deployment process?
Okay. I'm taking this in as if you wish to. Let me just, there we go. Could you take me back, Ollie, to the Octopus?
Head over here.
Yeah. So what you could do, for instance, if you wanted to just run, say for instance, you just wanted to run the deployment, you can actually just go in and disable it. So for instance, you can come in and just select, say for instance, you wanted to disable this step and then just do the register, or if you didn't want to register the deployment, you could disable this step and then rerun that. So yeah.
What is so thanks, Hilsani. What is the advantage to deploying from Jenkins as opposed to just deploying from Octopus Deploy?
It's really, to be honest, I find it's just a preference. I mean, we often do. I think we often see customers who just do the build, push it in, and then promote it through Octopus. The reason I use it, it's more of a demo purposes, is that you can run that check-in and then it will just basically push everything and automate the entire pipeline. purely as an efficiency thing. And I also do like an automated deployment. There's lots of ways to do it, but generally it's just automation and preference, really. You could, for instance, when you come in, you can come in and then just select deploy as well manually. And you can also have triggers as well.
Awesome. And one more for you, Derek. Can we use Octopus variables in raw YAML file Kubernetes deployments?
Yes. Yeah,
yes.
You should be able to do that. What I'll do there is, if you want details on that, I want to do that. What you do is head over to our Slack, and I can give you some more details. But yes, you should be able to do variable substitution on your Kubernetes deployments.
And one more actually, how to trigger the project build automatically in Jenkins on a new build? How do you trigger the project build automatically in Jenkins?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a good one. So there's a few ways to do that. Let's jump in. So let's have a look at the CI step. What you would do here is in your build, obviously if you've done some tests as well, what you can do is there's a few ways to do it. You can have it so that it's done after every pull request, for instance. In this instance, I just have it as it checks every 60 seconds for any new code and just automatically deploy it. And with the manual intervention step, you know it will only ever go as far as test, and then it'll hold off on production. But yeah, there's a way that, you've got a GitHub trigger as well, pull requests, branching. In this instance, I've just went for time-based, which is, I think you see here. Did you really mean every minute? Yes, I did.
that was pretty important for this live demo, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. I tend to find, you may find that, and what I tend to find is people will do maybe nightly deployments or nightly builds, etc., and then push that in so that you come into dev or test, and then your developer or your tester then has fresh code to work with.
Cool. And Ollie, for you, does Raygun have a Jira integration?
Yes, Raygun has Jira integration, and then you can correlate your specific errors with tickets inside of Jira.
Also, could you briefly talk about the My Errors tab? One of the folks was asking about that.
So I'll head over to here, and for this, I'll just change this one over to active again. So this is actually a really great question. This is so, if you're working in a larger team, you really want to gain visibility on pieces of work you might be picking up. If I open up this error, you can actually assign errors to your user. Ooh. One moment. Great. So here, up in the top right-hand corner, I can assign this over to my Ollie Bannister user. And if I head back into crash reporting, I can see that I have one error assigned to me, and the rest of the team is also aware that this error is being worked on by my user.
Cool. And a couple of questions around how Raygun compares to Datadog and New Relic. How would you kind of describe how we position ourselves against New Relic and Datadog? I know they're both very different, but what would be your comments on that?
Well, I mean, Datadog, it's a great dashboard. And I mean, we also have custom dashboards with our service. But I think, we really just pride ourselves on sort of, focusing solely sort of on the crash reporting, the software performance, and then also that performance bottleneck backend story. Obviously with companies like New Relic, they've been around a long time. But I really think with sort of, our APM tool, we're sort of pushing the boundaries and then trying to show that information in a really, I guess, powerful way. It's a good question.
I mean, some of the things I've seen is that, providing more detail. We are quite different to Datadog. I mean, we even use Datadog ourselves for more of the infrastructure, right? But we're more on the application side. Front-end performance bottlenecks, errors, things like that. And then you've got New Relic, which is an APM tool. And we've got APM as well. And we pride ourselves on delivering even more detail. But yeah, feel free to let us know what you guys think as well. Can I use Raygun to save logs like Apache logs?
Yeah, so if you were to jump in, I I guess that really depends on the information that you pass through. You could probably use some of the custom data features that are associated with a specific error or exception, and that would come through into your crash report, and you could extract that out of Raygun using that tool.
I know one of the things we often say is to try and help people and spend less time digging through logs, but of course people still want to save that, right, for reference.
Yeah, I think it's still a valuable tool to be able to have those logs at hand, and then to be able to sort of dig through those once those errors have arisen.
And then there's another question: can I see what users did in the web application, like recording those users and seeing where they get stuck? I guess.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
So I can dig back through into it. So this is sort of where our session information comes into play. So here we can see our Ollie Bannister user. He came through. He hit our main page. We then tried to do the sign-up flow, and so this is sort of showing us at certain points in time, what pages were the user on and what flow was he taking. And as we can see, hit the sign-up, ran into some problems, was still able to hit the success page, but we're able to sort of identify that was where the problems were.
Cool. Is storing the API key in page source a security problem? So that's an interesting one.
The API key is essentially only used to pump data into your application. None of our customers have run into any issues so far. It's the Raygun authentication token that you really want to keep on lock. This is to allow you to use things like our API endpoints, but your API key is essentially more of just an identifier, so we know where to correlate the information that's being pumped into our service.
Great. And so one more, is Raygun on-prem or is it only available in the cloud? We've had a couple.
So Raygun's hosted in the cloud. We do have on-premise options, but most of our customers find that the cloud solution works best for them. And so, yeah, you can feel free to reach out to us if you're looking for an on-premise option, but our cloud infrastructure works rather well.
Alrighty. So Derek, I've got one more for you, and I might butcher this because it's quite detailed. So let's see how we get on, and this might be kind of something to take off the webinar. But this is the last question we have. There's plenty of questions. Yep. Thanks everyone. So we want to use Octopus for service-specific secret configuration deployment. Scenario is to store sensitive configuration required by services, have it write accessible only by service owners, and have them read, rather reference, accessible by other service owners. All services are deployed to all the tenants, and configurations can be scoped per tenant or environment, such as production.
Is that secret server?
Specific secret configuration deployment.
I'm not sure. See, but what I would do there is, if you can grab a copy of that and pop it into the webinar channel, on Unity Slack, I'll then take it. I'll get that answered for it.
I thought you might take this on offline. Is there a way to model this using Octopus Deploy? I'm sure there is, but maybe that's something to take offline. All right.
That's quite a big question.
Well, should we jump into? I'll just scan the chat, but do you want to go through some of the extra resources? We're 2 minutes to the hour, so we're nailing it on time. So you take it away, mate.
Let's wrap this up. Okay. Thank you very much, Ollie and Andre. I thought that was fantastic. We've got a whole bunch of resources that you can use. Check out docs, Octopus docs. We've got videos which take you to our YouTube channel. This video will also be on there. There'll be a trial, like I said. You have free deploy. Octopus is free for up to 10 deployment targets in the cloud and on premise as well. Check out events for Octopus. This is where we post all our events and upcoming and previous webinar recordings. What I would do is we're going to send a copy of the slide deck. Ollie wrote a really great blog about their CI/CD workflow and how Octopus really helps them out. Definitely check out the Raygun documentation and their webinars. That's where they store all of the previous webinars, and then you can also sign up for a 14-day trial on raygun.com/trial. Okay, so there is one last page here, but there's a whole bunch of stuff here. You've got you can actually go in and have a look at the Jenkins configuration as well. So you can jump in, check out samples.octopus.app, where a lot of this, we've got a lot of really great pre-configured projects. And then you can also use Ollie's source control, pull that down and rerun this if you wish. Definitely check out Team City as well. And we also have ADO, Azure DevOps integration. So just to wrap this up, thank you very much for to everyone for attending. We do have some upcoming webinars on April 8th on Operation Runbooks, Octopus and Atlassian on April 15. And if you jump onto raygun.com/webinars, you'll be able to see all previously recorded webinars by Raygun and also any upcoming webinars. Andre, Ollie, thank you very much, chaps.
Thanks for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Cheers, fellas. We end it there.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. If you have any questions, hit us on email. We're more than happy to help after this. Cheers. See you.